Hey everyone, my name is Sammy Benjamin. I'm going to help you find your way around Storyblok, guide you through our visual editor, and I'll walk you through a demo space. Storyblok enables you to have multiple projects within each account. Spaces allow you to organize these projects into different areas. After logging into your account, you see an overview of all of your spaces on the right side, along with some key information, like region, last edit, users, and a small options button which allows you to enter the space, look into its settings, or simply duplicate it. If you have many spaces in your account, you can always use the search bar to quickly find the one you're looking for. You can also sort the results if you wish to. The next few topics will dive into the developer side of Storyblok. If you would like to skip this, feel free to jump ahead to content, where we discuss our real-time visual editor. The first thing you see after entering a space is the dashboard. It offers you a quick overview of some key information and data related to that specific space. Dashboard is the perfect place to catch up on important changes made within the space. Before jumping into more detail, it's worth mentioning that based on the user's role, the dashboard can look slightly different. There are three main variations: the owner dashboard, the admin dashboard, and the editor dashboard. Since I am the owner of my demo space, what I am seeing here is the owner dashboard. That's why, for example, I can see the plan details at the top. An editor would not be able to see that in the dashboard. Right after the plan details, you can see how many stories, assets, blocks, and users are in this space. We will go through stories, assets, and blocks in much more detail later. For now, just remember that stories are basically your content entries, and blocks are quite literally the building blocks of all of your content in Storyblok. The activity panel shows all the content edited by both the team and the user, in this case me. The list is sorted by date, as you can see on the right side, and you can quickly see what kinds of edits have taken place by looking at the small icons on the left side. The great thing about the My Last Edits part is that when you start working in the morning, you don't have to go around looking for the project that you were working on yesterday. You can simply come here, select your last edit, and jump right into the same project. The content activities and API request panels show exactly that: the number of content activities over time and the number of API requests over time. As I hover over these columns, you can see how many updates as well as how many API requests have been made each day. The apparent lack of activity is because this is just a demo space. On the left side of the interface, you can see Storyblok's main navigation. You can see the dashboard on the top, followed by all the different areas. Same as the dashboard, these areas may look slightly different based on your role, and also the apps that you are subscribed to. So your navigation panel may have a lot more options than mine. We'll go through each of them briefly in this video, but spend most of our time in the content area, as that's where you will be creating and editing content. For now, let's take a look at the block library. The block library, as the name suggests, is a library that holds all of the blocks that are used in this space. If you're a content editor, you probably won't spend a lot of time here, as this is mostly a developer-focused area. Storyblok uses a component-based approach to content management. Blocks are simply these modular components that can stack on top of each other to create content. The block library is where all of the definitions of your components and content types are stored. There are three main types of blocks: nested blocks, content type blocks, and universal blocks. For some examples, a banner is a nested block, an article page is a content type block, and key takeaways is a universal block, which technically means it's both a content type and a nested block. Blocks can be copied, moved, deleted, and customized easily, which in turn makes reusing and repurposing content much more efficient. This list basically shows every single block that exists within the demo space. You can also use the search bar to find a specific block. You can leave all of your blocks at the same place, or you can create different block groups to better organize them. To do that, you can simply click the plus new group on the left side, choose a name, and press enter. Now you have a group with 0 blocks in it. To move a block to a group, you can hover over it until the Options button pops up on the right side. Then choose Move to Group and select your group. You can also move a number of blocks at the same time by selecting them on the list and clicking on the Move to Group button here. Alternatively, you can also copy these blocks to another space or even delete them. Since blocks are the heart of content creation at Storyblok, we've made it very simple to create a new block. You can click the plus new block button on the top right of the page to create a block from scratch. You can also edit your existing blocks. Let's do that. Let's select key takeaways, which is a universal block. In the new window, you can see the fields that make up this block. Let's say we want to add a new field here. To do that, first we have to give it a name. Let's name it key takeaways. Then we have to choose the field type option. You can see we have various options, each for different use cases. You could go with normal Textera, which is probably the best case for some basic takeaways, or even go for a Markdown or proper rich text editor that gives you structured content in JSON format. If you want to build references or create a selection, you can go with single or multi options. Or you may want to use some images here, which means the asset or the multi-asset type would be the best choice. You can also extend the Storyblok interface with your own custom field type with what we call plugins. They allow you to build an integration with an internal solution or third-party vendor. Since we don't need any of that for a text box field, let's just go with a rich text editor. Now we have to click on Add, and here's our new field. New fields are always added to the bottom of the list. You can simply drag them to wherever you want them to be. Let's put this one right after the table field. If we now select the text box field, we can change the settings in the new window. For example, you can mark it as required field, so all key takeaway blocks must have the text box filled before being published. You can also select if the field is translatable or not, or set a max number of characters. Once you hit save, you have your new universal block added to your block library. I mentioned before that you can easily create a whole block from scratch, so let's quickly do that too. First, click on the Create New Block button. Now, choose a technical name for your block and choose its type. Let's call this one Alternative Blog and define it as a content type. Here, you can also choose if the block belongs to a block group or not. Now we have this blank canvas that we can use to create our alternative blog content type. You can add fields here just as we saw before. Then you can go to the Config tab to configure your block, like setting the block icon and color, or its display name. You can also use presets, which first have to be added inside the visual editor. We will also take a look at this later. For now, let's close our new block creation window and move to the assets area. The Asset Manager allows you to create, upload, edit, and store your assets directly in Storyblok. You can simply drag and drop new files or browse your computer to upload new assets. One of the best things about the Asset Manager is that our image service takes over the whole optimization of these assets. Whenever you upload an image to Storyblok, you or some developers in your team are allowed to use our image service for free. This allows you to receive smaller versions of your assets, generate thumbnails or preview images for your page overviews, or simply to enhance your site performance with lazy loading. Developers can also use the image service to change the format of any image. So let's upload our first assets. You have the option to rename your files if you'd like to, or set them to private assets by clicking the lock switch. If you click on the advanced options, you can also add alt text, captions, tags, or even a copyright or an expiration date. After you're done, click on save and upload your images. This may take a couple of seconds. Now that you can see your new assets are showing up here, as your projects grow, you'll end up with more and more assets. In that case, you can use the filters on the search bar to quickly find the asset you're looking for. For better structure, you can also organize your assets into folders. If I open this drop-down menu, I can now create a new folder for my new assets. Now I can simply select my assets, click on the Move to Folder button, and select the new folder that I just created. One of the greatest capabilities of our Asset Manager is the ability to directly edit your images. Cropping, rotating, changing the contrast or saturation, you can do all of that from here. You can select any image you want to edit. Here, you can see all the options available to you. On the right side, you can change the basic information, add in the metadata, check the activity, or see where the asset has been used in your space. A short side note here, if you'd like, you can set some asset fields such as the alt text or the caption as a required field. You can also achieve this by going to your space settings, choosing the asset library, and selecting the fields you'd like to set as required. Going back to our image, on the left side you can see a preview of your image. If you click anywhere on the image, a focus point would be set there. This will ensure your image is always centered on this point, regardless of what screen size you are viewing. If you want to get rid of it, just click on the focal point button up here. If you want to edit the image, you can simply click here to open up the image editor. The UI is very user-friendly, so I'll take you through editing an image. Once you're happy with the results, you can click Save, and that's it. But in the case that you want to keep both the original and the new version, you always have the option to save the edited image as a new asset. Each asset has its own unique URL. If you need that, just select the asset and click on the Copy URL button. You can also do it by clicking on the Options button with the 3 dots and selecting Copy URL. Before we move on to the next area, there's one more thing to remember. Once in a while, you may delete an asset by mistake, or you may delete it thinking you'll never need it again, only to realize you actually need it. Well, we keep your deleted assets available. Let's quickly delete an asset. If we now go to the Deleted Assets window, we can see our asset right here. If you don't need your deleted assets, you can also permanently delete them from here. If you want it back, you can simply select it and restore it. Now, let's have a look at data sources. Data sources are key value pairs. They're most useful for website labels or as default values for global components. These data sources allow you to create and manage those key value pairs. This is really nice when you create multi and single option dropdowns in Storyblok for your marketing team, for categories, different color options, or in general when you want to put options in one place and reuse them later on. Labels, on the other hand, would be text pieces that occur multiple times on your site, which you'd want to edit in one place. So your marketers can add the key newsletter headline here and the translations on the right-hand side. Your developer would be able to consume those key value pairs and output them where the headline is actually used. Now that we've gone through data sources, let's go through tags. Tags form the basic taxonomies. You can create tags within the content area and assign multiple tags to a story. The tags area basically gives you an overview of all the tags used in the space. You will also have jump links for each tag, which would redirect you to the content area and will automatically set a search filter, so you can see all of your content entries that share that tag. As you can see, I have already been assigning some tags to some of my content entries. You can use tags in so many different ways. You can sort your content based on languages, authors, context, audience, or any other way that you'd like. This area provides you with an organized view of all of the content entries that you tag, just by clicking on the jump link. Next, let's take a look at the apps directory. The apps directory allows you to install additional functionalities to Storyblok. You can install all kinds of apps like Task Manager, Trashbin, Activities, Approval, S3 backups, pipelines, and a lot more that would make your CMS experience even better. Depending on your subscription plan, your options when it comes to available apps may vary. Additionally, you can always extend Storyblok's capabilities with your own custom applications. If you're interested in that, just check out our documentation and guides on storyblok.com. For now, let's just install the Activities app. Simply select the app from the list, and in the following window, click Install. You can see that now there is a new area here called Activities. The activities area is a comprehensive list of all activities within the space. You can also choose to see those that have only occurred in a specific time frame. Back in the apps directory, you can also check the Installed tab to see which apps are currently installed in this space. There's one last section to go before we jump into creating content: the space settings. The settings area is where you can configure your space, from defining user roles and managing workflows to setting up integrations with different tools like Slack or using webhooks. Most of the fields in the settings area are accompanied by short descriptions of what they mean. Let's quickly go through a couple of options. The first thing you should know is that in the space section of your settings, you can find your space ID. You need this whenever you submit a support ticket. With your space ID, we can associate your support request with your space and react faster. In the Visual Editor tab, you can define multiple domains and locations to quickly switch the preview URLs in the Visual Editor. Let's quickly look at the Backup and Restore tab. This area allows you to configure your backup and restore options. You can activate automatic daily backups for a specific time. If you take a look at the Restore tab, you can see that you can also restore your space from backups on your Amazon S3 bucket. You can also choose which entities to restore. If you're a part of the marketing team, or if you're a manager, probably the most important parts of these settings are the team management and workflow sections. So let's take a look at those. The team management area allows you to configure your users and define different roles. You can invite collaborators to your space and then assign them any role that you'd like. If you want to add a new user, just click on the Add New User button, type in their email address, choose a role, and click on Send Invite. Speaking of roles, you can also define your custom roles with Storyblok. To do that, let's look at the Roles section. Let's say we want to have a new reviewer role whose job is to review content before they go live. I'm going to name this role Reviewer, and we can add a description. Now we can decide what this role is allowed to do. So I'll check Allow Reading Content, Allow Saving Content, Allow Deleting Content, and Allow Managing Tags. You can go into much more detail by looking at the other permission tabs. For example, in the Blocks tab, you can choose which individual blocks would the new role have access to. You can do the same thing with data sources and assets. The Workflow panel is where you define the different workflow stages for the space. As you can see, there are 3 default stages already set in every space: drafting, reviewing, and ready to publish. If you want to create custom workflows, all you have to do is give it a name, choose a color, and click on Add. You can also drag and drop stages to change the order. Let's move translating right before review. By clicking on the small options icon on each stage, you can change its settings. Let's try that with one of the default stages. As you can see, you can associate stages with specific roles or users, or set rules for stage transitions. For example, let's say we want to assign this stage to the role we just created before. When you choose the specific user's role option, a new panel opens up which allows you to choose the role. Assigning workflow stages is something that you must do from the content area, which actually brings us to the most important part of this video, where you create content and tell your stories. The content section is where the magic happens. This is where you'll shape your stories from the ground up. Let's first walk through the content area and then move on to the visual editor. In the content area, you have a list of every single content entry or stories within the space. Depending on your content structure, you may have a lot of folders here too. You can easily create new folders to structure your content if you'd like. To do that, just click on the Create New button and choose the folder. Now you can give the folder a name, an individual slug, and set some other options. For example, you can assign a specific content type to a folder. So I'll create a landing pages folder and assign the content type as default page. If you take a look at my articles folder, you can see the assigned content type is article page. And in fact, if I open the folder, you can see that only article type entries are allowed in there. Now let's create a new content entry, or a story as we call it in Storyblok. Again, we have to click on the Create New button and choose Story this time. Let's call it Product. You can see a new slug is automatically generated, but you can edit it if you'd like. Let's change ours to Product New. Now we can either have the page created in the main content area or choose a parent folder for it. Let's choose the landing pages we just created. And for content type, we can leave it as default page. This is Storyblok's visual editor. This is where marketers and content creators will be spending most of their time creating engaging content. What you see on the left side is a real-time live preview of your content. This is basically a preview of how your page will look once it goes live. We allow you to change the size of the preview window to see how your content will look on different screen sizes and devices. You can do that manually by dragging the edge, or choose one of the default sizes from up here. Let's return to the desktop size to continue editing. The right side is basically your content management area, which includes all of the content fields and blocks that you can adjust to create your content. As we saw before, content in Storyblok is created on a modular basis, with flexible blocks that can be stacked on top of each other to create unique pieces of content. And of course, you can always nest those blocks within each other, or customize and edit them to any degree you'd like. Keep in mind that the content blocks that you have for your project will look very different from what I have here in my demo space. That's because blocks are created by developers for each project individually. Of course, if you're using the Storyblok demo, you will have access to some of the pre-made blocks I have here, just to get to know the product better. But the main strength of a component-based content management system is to have your own customized content blocks. Now, back to the visual editor. Let's start adding some content to our page. These are all the content blocks that I'm allowed to use in a default page content type. Remember that blocks can be assigned to specific content types. So for example, if I would be creating an article instead, I would have access to different blocks. Your developers can help you navigate blocks easier. If they implement block previews, you can hover over a block and see a preview image of it. As your projects and teams grow, you're going to end up with a lot of different blocks. And sometimes it's hard to remember all of the names, so it's really handy to identify them quickly. You can also use the filter to find the blocks easier. For now, let's add a hero block to our page. You can see that the block is now added, but we still have to fill it with content. Let's start by adding a background. So we enter the block, and on the right-hand side, we can go to background and select a video for the background. When you click on the Add Asset button, you will get redirected to your asset manager. You can choose an asset you already have there, or simply upload a new one. If you're not completely happy with your new background, you can either replace it or edit it from here. Now, let's add a headline and some description. I can also change my text color if I wanted to, or add a button. Let's do that. Let's call it Home. You can choose where your button directs the user. Let's keep it as an internal link and choose our home page. Within the Style tab, we can give it a new color and maybe make it a bit bigger. The button we just created is a good example of a nested block. That means we have the button block sitting inside the bigger hero block. Let's add a couple of more blocks to our page. I'm going to add a grid section, a banner, and a form section. Now let's put some content in these blocks. Let's click here to open up the grid section. Within the General tab, we can add a headline and a lead. Then I'll click on Cards here, and I'd like to add 4 cards. For each card, we will need an asset, which I'll be using some icons for, a label, and some text. Let's go through the first one together. First, let's add an asset that we already uploaded to our asset manager. Let's call this one Space Exploration. and I'll add a quick description. Now that we have our first card completed, I'll quickly go through the next 3. Let's go back into our first card and add a button. All you have to do is click on the card you'd like to add to, and click here to add a button. Within the button settings, we can link this to an internal link and label it something like Visit. Then we can change the style. I'll enable Ghost, change the color to Secondary, and alter the size if needed. Let's add one more button to another card. Okay, cool. I like the way it looks, but I also like symmetry. So let's move this card on the left with the button to the center. Let's quickly fill the remaining blocks too. Let's give our banner a new background and some text. Storyblok also has a versatile image service for optimizing all your assets. I, for example, can change the background blur or the brightness here. The developers in your team can use our image service to optimize all of your images to improve your site's performance significantly. Finally, scrolling down to the form, I actually like the way it looks, but let's click Submit to test it out. We allow you to change the size of the preview window to see how your content will look on different screen sizes and devices. As I said before, you can always rearrange your blocks if you want to. You can also copy and paste your blocks across different stories. I'm going to show you how that works by using our content browser. You can open up the content browser by clicking here. You can see that we are currently in the landing pages folder, and you can see the entries in this folder listed here. If I click on the small home icon, I can see my whole content area. So let's try bringing a block from our home page to the page that we are currently working on. All right, let's copy the featured articles section. And now let's use the content browser to go back to our original page. And now you can see whenever I move my cursor over the right panel here where you add new blocks, I can now see a new paste button pop up. So let's go ahead and paste it, and there you go. Of course, if I want to, I can now edit the content too. As I was working on the content, you've probably noticed 2 icons popping up while hovering over different parts of the page, and also over different fields in a block. One of these is the settings, and the other is discussions. Discussions is one of the most powerful tools of our visual editor. It allows you and your team members to collaborate directly inside a piece of content. You no longer have to give and receive feedback on Google Docs or other similar platforms, and then bring your finished content to your CMS. With Storyblok's discussions and commenting system, you can collaborate within your CMS as you are building your content on the go. This makes content editing both smoother and faster. Let's say I was not happy with the video in the header and wanted to ask someone in the team to find something else. I can simply open a discussion on the background video field, tag them, and tell them what I need. Now you can see there is a speech bubble with the number 1 next to the field. That means there is currently 1 comment on this specific field. At the very top of the page, you can see another speech bubble with a 1 added to it. This one keeps track of all of the comments on this page. I'll add another comment on the headline, for example. Now you can see the number has increased to 2. If you click on that, you'll see a list of all comments on this page. You can also see where the comments have been added, to which language version of the page the comment has been added, and when the comment was added. Storyblok has integrated internationalization features to translate your web pages. This allows you to stay organized and keep comments separate. We'll talk more about this later. You can also see a list of all resolved comments here on the other tab. If you click on a comment, you will be redirected to that field. Let's do that. We can quickly apply these changes and then answer back. Once we're finished, we can resolve this discussion. With Storyblok's commenting capabilities, you no longer have to rely on emails, Slack messages, or Google Docs discussions to run a feedback loop. You can do everything in the same space. Let's say we actually wanted to publish this page, but we wanted to first ask a reviewer on the team to review it. After saving my content, I can click on the Workflow Stages button here. You can see the stage is set to none. From here, I can set that to reviewing and then assign it to someone from the team. From here, you can also look at the workflow comments in the workflow history. Now let's save it, and you can now see the workflow stage showing up at the top of the page. The entry configuration window allows you to quickly change the configuration of your story and save it. The block library is a quick access to all the blocks that belong in the space. You can also edit existing blocks or create completely new ones from here. At the top of the page, you can also find the preview button. If you press that, a new window will open up in your browser, which is a preview of the current page. This is great if you're preparing a concept and are looking for feedback before publishing it. Or you may want to show it to someone outside of the organization. Next to the preview window, you can see the publishing status of your story. The gray icon means that the page is not yet published. It will turn green once it is. You can also check the complete history of your page in the visual editor. Open up this drop-down menu next to Publish and click on Page History. This is the complete log of all changes since the page was created. You can read our editor guides for more detailed explanations of the page history and how to use it to restore your page to older versions. If you're happy with everything, you can click Publish. But wait, something's wrong. That's because I'm still at the reviewing stage and it won't allow me to publish the story like that. First, I have to advance the workflow stage to Ready to Publish. And now I can finally publish my page. Storyblok not only supports multiple languages, but it also integrates with various tools to manage translations. There are different ways you can manage content for multiple languages and different countries inside Storyblok. You can either use a field-level translation, folder-level translation, space-level translation, or use field and folder combined. Each one of these options are explained in depth in our documentation. For now, let's take a look at the field-level translation. As the name suggests, with this option you can store multi-language content on the field level. That basically means that you only need a single content tree and don't have to create standalone folders for each country or language. As long as your content is pretty similar across languages, this is probably the best option for you. With field-level translation, you have fewer content entries to manage and the system will take care of serving the correct language automatically. So let's take a look at the field-level translation in action. The first thing that you have to do after entering your Storyblok space is to go to Settings and find the Internationalization tab under Configuration. Now add all the languages that you want your content translated into. Let's add German and French, and remember to save these settings. We basically have to define which content fields we want to be translatable. You can do that by either going through the block library or from the visual editor. We'll go with the visual editor option. So go to Content and open the home page. First thing, you can see a new drop-down menu at the top of the page. That's your language option. Default here is simply English, and you can see German and French also added there. But before changing the language, first we have to set some fields to translatable and actually translate the content. Let's try that with the hero block at the top. If you hover over each field, you can see the settings icon pop up. And here you can see that the translatable option is already checked for this field. Let's do that for the subheadline and the button text field too. Remember, if you check the translatable tag in one of the fields of a block, it will apply to all instances of that block across your website. Now, if I change the language to German, I can go and change the headline and the subheadline of the hero component. You can see now there's a new translate slider for those fields. Same thing for the button labels. Now let's save the page. Now, if I change my language back to default, you can see the English version of my content. And as soon as I turn it back to German, you will see the German version again. Of course, you can publish each localized version independently from each other, and you can customize each one however you wish. As I mentioned in the beginning, there are other ways with which you can internationalize your content with Storyblok. The field level option that we just saw is only one of them. Thanks for taking the time to watch our walkthrough. If you have any more questions or need help with anything, there are many ways to contact us at Storyblok. You can use our live chat to talk to us directly, write on our forum at forum.storyblok.com, leave a message in our Discord, submit a contact form, or simply check out our documentation and user guides at storyblok.com.